Welcome back, everyone, to our fourth episode of the Tickets for Two podcast, where we aim to provide our unique insights on films and possibly TV shows. Okay, Santi, what are we diving into today?
Today, Andrew, we are reviewing Nick Cage, the movie. I don't remember what it's called.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Starring Nick Cage. Nicolas Cage is Nick Cage. It's right on the poster.
This was the perfect movie for our icon and our legend, Nick Cage. It was beautiful. Well, tell me your first thoughts when you exited the theater.
It was funny. I had a good time. I had a smile on my face as I was leaving the theater, and I also felt like it wasn't, just funny. It had a lot of heart. It was well crafted, and Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal are a joy to watch on the big screen. What did you think?
Definitely, I agree with you there. Pedro Pascal was so admirable. Nicolas Cage did his thing as he usually does and gave us his incredible performance. And leaving the theater, I felt the whole marketing strategy that was behind this film kind of kept its promise, and I loved it. It was a great joy to come out of that theater, and I feel like if anyone ever asked me if it was worth watching, I'd definitely say go see it.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely recommend this if you just want to go to the theater, have a good time, and if you love Nick Cage, you're going to love this movie. You mentioned the advertising on this. I didn't watch any trailers beforehand, but what was it about the trailers? Like, what do they show? I'm trying to get an idea about, like, could you tell this was a Nick Cage movie, or was it, kind of trying to be something else?
Right. This film, I did not think I was going to end up watching, or especially come talk about it. So I fell victim to their entire marketing plan, which was the Instagram ads, the trailers online on YouTube, as well as their clips that they would release here and there. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be one of those personal films that maybe it might have been Nicolas Cage's passion project, sort of a self-reflection on his life, and I didn't think too much of it. But when I was watching it, they went pretty unique direction when it came to explain the film to us. They kind of gave us very little, maybe a couple of jokes here and there, but overall they really hid the gold of the film, which you eventually end up seeing yourself when you go in the theater. But it was enough to keep you excited and interested. I think that was the whole point of the marketing, was get you intrigued on what it could be about, and they hit that nail on the head.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just going in blind, I had a vague idea about what it was going to be about. Like, Nick Cage was in it. I knew Pedro Pascal was in it, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know he was playing himself in the movie. So seeing that was really cool, and it was, really well done. And just right off the bat, you can tell he was having a lot of fun with it. And I think that's like the most important thing that makes this movie, is that Nick Cage has a lot of fun with it. He's not just, shoehorned in looking for a paycheck. But him and Pedro Pascal, they really have incredible chemistry in this film. They had me howling with laughter throughout. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's funny that you say that, because at the very beginning, when this film was being made, or the script was being written, the writer actually told Collider, the news article, that they didn't even want Nick Cage to do they didn't think Nick Cage would do the film. They were actually they had Christian Bale or Daniel Day-Lewis in mind to play Nicolas Cage, because they thought he would want nothing to do with it. And when they interviewed Nick Cage as well, he said himself that he wanted nothing to do with it. He stayed away from the film because...
So it was always going to be about Nick Cage then? It wasn't going to be... Who'd you mention? Christian Bale playing himself? It was always going to be someone playing as Nick Cage?
Yeah, it was always going to be someone else playing, no matter what. But they approached Nick Cage, and he said to himself, or in the interview, that they thought it was going to make fun of him. But after reading more and more into it, it was it was more of a... I forget how he called it, but he loved it at the end of it all, and that's why we see him here now.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading it now. It says, Nick Cage turned it down 3-4 times, and then he only changed his mind after the director and writer Tom Gormican wrote him like a personal letter. So it seems like the director was kind of the character of Pedro Pascal in this movie. Just to give a brief summary without spoiling anything major, essentially this movie, Nick Cage is asked to go hang out with Pedro Pascal's character, who's some rich guy because he's a big fan of him as an actor. And then the movie kind of unfolds from there, just to give you some information. But the director seems like a real life fanboy, just like Pedro Pascal's character was,
which is amazing. That's why it all worked out. I feel like you really can't hate Nicolas Cage. He's such a lovable guy, a great character. So to have this film centered around him, it worked so well. And I say anyone who wants to go see it, give it a try.
Yeah. So yeah, if you love Nick Cage, you're gonna love this movie. If you're just looking for something lighthearted, with Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage and some other good actors, something funny, you're gonna enjoy this movie. So we both recommend it. And now we're gonna kind of get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie, now's the time to go see it and come back and listen to the rest of this. Andrew, tell me right off the bat, what were some really specific things that you really liked in this film?
What I loved is that, as we were mentioning earlier, this film wasn't just a playwright where Nicolas Cage is doing his own thing. It was based off his life, and that's what kind of drew me in towards the beginning of the film, because I understand. I'm not sure if anyone else out there knows much about this kind of actor and his personal life. I don't think many people do, but I'm aware that Nicolas Cage has had also divorce issues. He's also been financially irresponsible in the past, and there was times where he was criticized for taking up any role or any script that was delivered to his desk. And seeing this film, that's what we got to see, is a Nicolas Cage who was going through a divorce. He was squatting in an LA apartment, and he was like worried about picking up this $1 million check. And seeing that happen in this film, I loved that. It was kind of Nick Cage going through a giant 2-hour therapy session, and I loved it because it was handled so very well. And like I mentioned, the entire marketing for this was so spot on that it delivered when I saw the film. And you cannot get enough of Pedro Pascal. He is so good in this. So very good. Well,
really sells the role.
Definitely. And what do you think?
Yeah, Pedro was just fun. You could just tell he was having fun with it. At first, I thought, like, okay, is Nick Cage playing himself? Is Pedro Pascal playing himself? Like, what's going on there? But no, he was playing his own original character. Name was Javi. And it was just so good. Like, you genuinely believe that he was a massive Nick Cage fanboy. And he just was enamored and in love with the guy. And kind of going back to what you mentioned about Nick Cage and how it relates to his life, this movie's very meta, and there's just hints throughout the film that how it's gonna end is kind of the movie you're seeing right now that they're trying to put together. And that stuff was really well done, in my opinion, even though it gets a little generic towards the end. It's kind of like a lot of Nick Cage movies are like that. But what really sells the movie was just Pedro and Nick Cage just having a lot of fun with each other, and you could just totally watch like a spin-off series with just those two. They're in a way they're so good that it kind of overshadows everything else in the film, especially like in the beginning it touches up on Nick Cage's personal life a bit, and then you kind of stop caring about that stuff because you just want to see him and Javi's character, played by Pedro Pascal, just have a good time.
Yeah, their chemistry was undeniably probably the most organic pair on screen that we've seen in a long time. The way that they just interact with each other, the jokes that they riff off of one another, it just feels like you mentioned they're best friends, and he can't get enough of Nicolas Cage. And I love that in the film, as you're watching it, they're giving Nicolas Cage a hard time for like making his daughter watch that one 1920 silent film, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, or I think that's how you pronounce it. And then as you watch the movie and Nicolas Cage asks Javi the same thing, he asks him, well, what's your favorite movie? And Javi says Paddington 2, which we mentioned in the last episode is one of the greatest films ever reviewed. And then the same thing, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and I think that was such a nice touch. Is like, oh yeah, that's one of my favorite films. I low key was hoping that Javi would have said Croods too, just to like I don't know why, but I kind of expected that. But I definitely love the way that they work together, and I probably will see it again if I ever got a chance to. But
dude, that's the thing. Like it's like it's just a comedy. But it's got a little special heart to it. And if you go watch it with someone who hasn't seen it, you would do that. It's like, oh, I remember that movie. Yeah, that's gonna make me laugh. I'm gonna put that on. It was really enjoyable. And then you were mentioning Pedro and Nick's chemistry in this film. Essentially, it starts off a little awkward with them.
Yeah.
And Nick Cage shows up. He's like, I don't know why this guy wants me at his resort in, what was it, Mallorca,
Yeah.
Spain. And that's why they did such a good job. Because it's not like they just showed up like, oh, they're good friends. He's just kind of like, dude, who's this like guy who's obsessed with me? He's like, whatever, I'm just here to get a paycheck because I need the money and I'm going to retire from acting. And then, everything that happens after that is just so well done. Speaking of which, you talk about Nick Cage being himself. What did you think about his like CGI character that he kept interacting with? Wasn't that hilarious?
That was so funny to me. Like, that was his little devil on his shoulder that he kept going back to.
Yeah.
Which was really cool because I was reading an article about they were interviewing Nick Cage. Like, what did you think about that? What did you think about talking across your younger self? And he was mentioning that character that he's talking to, Nicky Cage, is based off of his character in the movie Wild at Heart, which is a super old film, I think in the 90s. But he's actually playing himself, Nicky Cage, at an interview. If you go on YouTube and then you type in Nicolas Cage Wogan Show, WOGAN. If you look that up on YouTube, you see that Nicolas Cage is promoting his film Wild at Heart on that British television show, the British talk show, and he's so arrogant. He's so obnoxious.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is an old one, though, right?
It's super
like an
old,
film.
but it's an actual interview where he's promoting his film Wild at Heart, and Nicolas Cage says that's who he's playing as Nicky Cage.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, this super obnoxious guy that just can't stop talking. And it's hilarious when you see that interview on YouTube. It's like exactly what you see in the film.
Yeah, and there's a lot of references to a lot of his movies. So if you don't really know who Nick Cage is, you'll still enjoy the film. But specifically Face Off, Con Air, The Rock, a lot of like his older movies are constantly referenced in this film.
Face Off more than anything,
I
too.
think it makes it better. What was that?
Face Off more than anything is reference, I think.
Yeah, definitely. A lot from that one. I'm personally, I'll be honest, I haven't seen that many Nick Cage movies, but I know who he is. Like, so I'm glad we got the National Treasure poster.
Oh, yeah.
Towards the end, I'm like, oh, finally, like something I know, something I know Nick Cage played in. But like I said, you don't even need that stuff for this film. It's still really good, aside from all that. And then regarding his like CGI character, let's just be honest. If we're doing contenders for the best line of 2022 in any film, even TV show, one of them has to be. It has to be Nick fucking. I mean, he did it longer than that. Cage. Oh, that had my theater just howling with laughter. That was good.
Because you can imagine that actually happening. Like I can envision Nicolas Cage telling himself that in the mirror.
Exactly. He's so obsessed with himself. He was so obsessed with himself. That character was just hilarious. But he did kind of like wander off towards the end. Did they have like a climax scene together, or like towards the end where he was just kind of like,
well, he kissed
saying
himself.
goodbye to him?
Yeah. That was the time when they were having like the drink together, and then they ended up making out. And it's like, okay, I don't know. I don't know what to think about
that was
this.
earlier in the film. Yeah, I meant later in the film. I don't remember if he was in the thing, but that make-out scene. It's got to be. You know what's funny? It's like it wasn't even awkward. It was just kind of like the theater just kind of accepted that scene, that it's Nick Cage making out with Nick Cage. It's like sometimes you would like roll your eyes at that, but it's like this is just funny. It's just this guy loves himself so much. It's just hilarious.
Too much, but it's quite the opposite in real life. I was reading that they asked him about does Nicolas Cage think that he's self-absorbed, and he says like, no, not at all. I'm more of a contemporary kind of guy. I like to keep to myself. He doesn't go to award shows anymore. He doesn't feel the need to sell himself in public. He's such a wholesome guy nowadays. To see this opposite side of him in the film, it definitely hits comedy gold for me.
Yeah, so he's kind of playing, as you were mentioning, an older version of himself, the actor, but also playing the character he plays in his films.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of the way I saw it. I mean, I haven't seen that many of his movies, but it just kind of seemed like he is acting he's like acting within an actor within an actor. It's like totally like some Inception shit.
Like you said, very
You know,
meta, right?
that's the way I saw it. What was that?
Like very meta, right?
Yeah, totally. Oh, it's totally meta. There are so many like breaking the fourth wall references and things like that. And like I said, they even like they give away the whole plot. I think it was like halfway through the film, maybe less. When they were tripping on LSD, which is one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen. And then Nick Cage makes a comment to Javi Gutierrez, and he's basically like, "Oh, so like," and then it goes boom, generic action scene, character. And then Javi's like, "Oh, I thought it was gonna be a character film." It's like, no. And then my daughter gets kidnapped. Then I go save her. I'm like, oh, I kind of think I see what they're hinting at, and that's exactly what happened.
And that was pretty cool too, because I did not expect that until that scene where they're shooting clay pigeons, and he starts talking about like, what if this was a kidnapping movie? And at that point, I'm all like, okay, this was the same exact thing they were talking about. It was character driven at the very beginning, and now it's leading up to that third act of being a kidnapping, which I think was pretty cool because I didn't expect it. But
yeah, I didn't either. I know it's like hinted at, and I was saying that, but I was just kind of laughing along, and then I'm like, oh, that's a really neat way to wrap it up. And it's generic, but at the same time, if you really think about like the movies that he was hinting at, he was playing earlier, with the Golden Guns and all that, it's kind of like how some of his films probably ended too, is like in that generic action scene. So it was very intentional to end it like that. You have this character thing early on, and then it goes generic action. But the director Tom Gormican definitely intended to do that. Who I have no idea who he is, by the way. I don't know what any other movie this guy has directed or written, but seems like he just had a long time birthday wish to do a movie about Nick Cage.
And he finally got it. But why do you think in the film Nicolas Cage ended up liking Javi so much? Do you think that he saw Javi as like who he could have been if he was less like less concerned with work and more concerned about family? Like, because he saw Javi as like this happy-go-lucky guy, and Nicolas Cage was so full of problems and so much weight on his shoulders. Like, why did he think he ended up liking him so much at the end?
Yeah, that's actually a good way of talking about it. I think early on, what made him warm up to him was just they had a good time together. He went from expecting to just kind of go there and do another role, like as an actor essentially, saying like, oh, sure, I'll read your script and all of that. Like, blah blah blah. But then he really just enjoyed hanging out with this guy. He seemed down to earth, and he seemed like he had the same passions as Nick Cage in the film in terms of like crafting a film that has a lot of meaning from like an art standpoint. And I think his character was able to really connect with Javi's in that sense. And I think by the end of it, they had just gone through so much together that they were just like best friends.
And I think the LSD part of the movie is what really solidified their friendship. I think that's a common thing where if you end up doing, if you go drinking with friends or doing stuff with friends, you build a bond. So I guess because they took that together, I think that was pretty hilarious.
That shared traumatic experience.
Exactly. There we go. And the reference to Gone in 60 Seconds of doing his own stunts, his own driving was so perfect and a perfect place for that. I liked it. But again, Pedro Pascal did so well as a comedy actor. This was so good.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in too many comedic films. I think I'm just top off my head. I can remember. I mean, everyone knows him as the Game of Thrones guy, the Mandalorian guy.
I mean, Narcos is probably what he really kicked him off.
Is he a Narcos? I haven't seen that yet, but is he serious in that show?
Yeah, serious in that show on Netflix, and I think that's what everyone kind of remembers him from too. Is Narcos.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he's, dare I say, even a better comedic actor than a drama one. I mean, the dude was just hilarious, but no, he definitely has a lot of range.
So that's definitely what we love about this film. That was definitely something that we can seriously say it did so well on. But what didn't hit the mark for you?
I think for me, there wasn't too much that this film missed. Definitely the CIA subplot felt a little, shoehorned in. Like I said, I know it's all meta, but at the end of the day, it's in the film. I didn't think Tiffany Haddish was that funny. Luckily, she wasn't in the film that much. But the CIA stuff, the way they tried to tie it in, and the drugs and all that, and the kidnapping, I was just kind of like, I feel like they could have just been a lot more condensed. And maybe that's just because Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal are so fun to watch in this film. But that was my main takeaway, was that, the CIA stuff was just kind of lame. And the only other thing for me was, as meta as it was, I felt the third act still felt a little out of place to me, even if it was intentional. I really would have liked them to explore, like, if it was just like 2 hours of them exploring like each other's characters, their motivations, what kind of film they want to make, and like just going through shared experiences there. Like imagine that LSD scene, and then it happening with something else and something else and something else, and they're just kind of like bonding. That would have been really well done. What about you?
Man, there's one big thing that watching this movie hit me, and I did not like it.
Oh yeah,
at all.
you told me you told me about it, but you didn't tell me what it was.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? So this film had so much potential of being such an original, beautiful piece on its own. It was, I had such a high hopes that I thought I was gonna come into this seeing an original film where like nothing was ever like it before. Sure, it had like the whole concept of Nick Cage playing himself, and the comedy was so uniquely good. But I just couldn't get out of my head that this film was a mirrored version of The Interview with Seth Rogen and James Franco. It was celebrities or actors who were hired by the CIA to take someone out, and they were guided through the process. That was the exact same.
I didn't think about that. I'd seen that movie too.
It was so bothering to me. Like, once that hit my mind, I couldn't see the film the same way.
Really?
I couldn't. Everything was so similar.
But I didn't understand the CIA stuff in this film. So, like, he just walks into the hotel, and then Tiffany Haddish's character's like, oh, I can get him. And then the other guy, CIA guy, he's like, oh, no, like, leave him alone. But what was... I was confused. Like, what was their plan?
So I think there was someone else that was supposed to be on the plane, or I think they were supposed to get Javi to begin with, just to interrogate him for whoever kidnapped the president's elect.
Oh, they were gonna kidnap Javi, but they kidnapped Nick Cage instead to infiltrate. But how did they? It was just so weird and shoehorned in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think about. Go ahead.
There was very little explanation to it for sure. All I remember seeing is Nicolas Cage getting off the plane, and they were just talking to themselves about, oh, let's take him instead. And that's all I remember. So that's the most assumption that I could make.
Yeah, the CIA guy was funny. The one who I think died later.
Oh yeah, that guy was pretty. I mean, he was in Suicide Squad as well. He's a pretty funny guy. Right. He does small minor roles, but he's pretty funny.
I knew I saw him from somewhere. I think I also saw him in Blockers. That's where I remember him from.
I do not remember. I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Yeah, but it's interesting you mentioned. So in the interview, they're like hired from the start, and then there's jobs to take out Kim Jong-un, and this one, he was supposed to kill Javi, right?
He was pretty much instructed to kill Javi.
I guess I can see that,
and that's why it bothered me so much. I was hoping so much for this to be on its own playing field, but after making that comparison in my head, I can't get it out. I can't get it out.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. But even aside from that, it's don't you think that's kind of related to, what I was talking about with the character stuff? Because early in the film, they're just kind of talking and hanging out, and it's like, oh, this is kind of dope. I'm enjoying watching this, and it didn't need the whole twist or whatever with his cousin to come in, like, oh no, I'm the guy who kidnapped her, and all of that. Like, okay, let's go shoot him up. Didn't you think that was kind of like, like it could have been more? This could have been more.
Yeah, so I think, again, we're all just speculating here, but it feels like we mentioned the writers loved making this movie happen, like writing about it, and I feel it's somewhere along the line they told themselves, we have this fan fiction of Nicolas Cage, like we need to actually add some drama to it, and the first thing they probably thought of was like, oh, let's add this kidnapping element to it. And
like a rewrite. Don't you think so?
It had to have been. Maybe. Yeah,
the studio's like, we got to get some action. That's like the CIA stuff feels just so out of place in this film. It's just so random. Like I kind of get that you need that concept in it, but I feel like you can kind of write it out and the movie still works. Like let's just say Nick Cage decides to play hero and just save that girl. It's not his daughter, just save this random girl anyway. Like he wanted to. That would have been kind of interesting as well. But yeah, it was probably rewriting.
It was probably they're probably at a table at the studio, and a bunch of suits are standing around. Like, oh, what are people? What are the what are the polls or that people react to the most?
It is.
Yeah, and they probably thought like, oh, a kidnapping people could relate to. But
and it's made by, I think, distributed by Lionsgate, and they're constantly trying to. I think they're struggling the last couple of years.
Oh, really?
But yeah.
I wonder if this film is gonna take the place in a Nicolas Cage's repertoire, like John Malkovich. I remember there was a time when John Malkovich, he was pretty down on his luck kind of actor, and then he made that film about himself, the Being John Malkovich, about a struggling actor, and then next thing you know, his career's back up and running again.
It could be. It could be that. I mean, this is fairly highly rated, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a Metacritic of 67. I think Being John Malkovich has really high reviews, though. It's considered like a really good movie. But yeah, it could be the film that sparks his love for acting again. I don't know. Was he struggling recently?
I mean, the last two projects that he did were really good that he mentioned, but they're indie films like Pig and Mandy. And I think the one that just recently was that what was it called? It's that film based on the Five Nights at Freddy video game where he spends like a night in an arcade where the animatronics come to life and try to kill him.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called.
But so I think after that, I don't know if it was a flop, but I know it wasn't. He didn't do so well. So I wonder if now he's trying to get back into the game of being taken seriously as an actor. Maybe not just as comedic, but maybe action as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. Some other actors in this film, Neil Patrick Harris, who was his agent.
Oh my god, I forgot that he was in this.
Yeah, he was the first 20 minutes. He was pretty funny too.
Yeah, no, that was like him? He was spot on. Like I remember in that one scene where he notices his door is locked on his apartment, and he's trying to tell his agent Neil Patrick Harris what he wants to say in the press, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going through the hills right now. Can you say that again?" Like, oh, it's pretty funny to me. Like I think every part of this film, every corner you hit, it had good jokes. It was not at any point cringy.
It was never cringe. It was never forced or cringy,
never.
Even though it could have been. Like as we mentioned, the kissing scene where he's kissing a CGI version of himself. We mentioned Nick fucking Cage and all that. Even some of the other like one-liners in this film. It's like I never really felt like of course because every comedy has some crappy humor in it. You just gotta deal with. But everything felt really organic.
Surprisingly, it did.
Yeah. Did you? I was gonna say something else I didn't like. Not that big a deal. It's only like an hour 45. But there's like a climax scene where him and Javi are gonna kill each other, and then they have to escape, and then they have to go save his daughter. It just felt like it was weird. It was like two back-to-back climaxes. It just felt like the one where they were gonna kill each other. Like, okay, this is the end of the movie. I felt like it was gonna end. So it's not like too long. I was never bored, but pacing a little weird in that transition.
You think so?
Second to third act.
You think so?
Yeah, because it was ending, and then it's like, this is it. They're gonna not kill each other. Something's gonna happen, and then they get back, and it's like, oh, we're gonna go on another mission again. It's like, okay, here we go again.
I think what I would have loved to see is a little bit more cameos from other actors or like other actor friends of Nicolas Cage. If this movie is pretty much based in like now real time, where we're assuming Nicolas Cage is this huge movie star and everyone else is whatever, it would have been nice to see like little cameos of like friends and stuff.
We got Demi Moore. Did they not play in any movies with each other? Demi Moore was playing his ex in the movie within the movie.
When was this?
Demi Moore at the end. Like when they're at the theater and they're playing the movie.
Yeah. Was she sitting close to him?
Demi Moore was playing his ex-wife from the film.
Interesting. I did not catch that.
Oh, you didn't catch that? Yeah,
no.
It was funny because I zoomed in. It's like, what the hell? It's because it transitioned because it was the end of the actual film, and then it transitioned to like a scene where it's like Demi Moore. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then it zoomed out and it's like, oh, they're in the movie theater. Yeah. So that was one cameo.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. The only other actor I remember was Alessandra Mastronardi, who's Gabriella. She was Javi's like girlfriend in the film, and I remember her from Master of None, but that's not really like a cameo. But she had a small role, but again, convincingly played. Enjoyed watching her.
What do you think about Javier's character in general? Do you feel like the way he was like important to the movie, or do you think we could have gone without him?
Oh, like the cousin or Javi himself?
Javi himself. Do you feel like this could have been just a coming to age tale like Nicolas Cage going against his career, or do you feel like Javi was like necessary?
It's a good question. I think Nick Cage could have just done the movie himself, like just running into random people, random cameos, and it still would have, been fine. But Javi makes it like a different movie. It's kind of like a buddy cop comedy movie. Mm-hmm. Did you feel the same way?
I felt the same way, exactly. I was for a second telling myself I would have loved to see 1 hour and 45 minutes of Nicolas Cage going from a struggling actor to this prolific success towards the end of it. Mm-hmm. But as I keep watching and I see Javi doing his thing and Pedro Pascal being just absolutely adorable at times, I felt like, yeah, this is exactly what we needed as an audience.
Yeah. No, I totally felt the same way.
How familiar are you with Nicolas Cage films in general?
No, I think I mentioned earlier, not that familiar. Like, I would say, like, if you asked me off the top of my head, I would say, like, National Treasure.
National Treasure. I remember.
I've seen National Treasure. I've seen Knowing, Lord of War, Kick-Ass. I enjoyed him in that one.
That's right.
I think those are, like, the ones off the top of my head.
I'm never going to forget Knowing gave me nightmares for the longest time.
Did it?
I remember, like, the ending when, like, in Knowing, when the aliens come down and they're like these angelic beings swooping up the kids. Dude, those things scared me, man. Like
it is creepy.
For nights after that, all I do is kept dreaming about these ghostly angels that are coming down from the sky. Yeah, that was a good film, though.
Yeah.
And then we can't forget Sorcerer's Apprentice. That was a unfortunate flop for
What was
him.
that? Is that a book?
It was, I think it's a Disney movie, but yeah, it was based off a book about like this wizard that gives a kid wizard powers, and it was like, oh, Nicolas Cage, why?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. I've heard of that, but I don't remember what it was. But it seems like, the main ones for this one that they reference: Con Air,
Leaving
The
Las
Rock,
Vegas, Face Off.
Face Off seems to be referenced a lot in this film.
Yeah, and then I think they mentioned Mandy. I remember they mentioned Mandy when they're in the truck together, and then everything is. Though the memorabilia room that Javi has about Nick Cage.
Oh my god, yeah, I forgot to talk about that.
That was so good.
You expected it because you're like, okay, it's not gonna be the kidnapped girl. It's gonna be something like weird about Nick Cage. Like, you kind of knew it was coming, but you didn't think they'd go that far with it.
And everything from like the pillow that where you like if you move it, it covers his face or reveals the face.
Yeah, the one that you like you swipe your hand on it and changes colors, and then you have the gun. That's where the National Treasure poster was too. But it's like you kind of knew it was coming, but it was still hilarious.
I respect it though. If there was one actor that you would make a memorabilia room for, who would you choose?
That's a good question. I'd have to actually think about that one.
Off the top of your head, there's got to be someone that you probably.
I'll say Danny DeVito.
It's
got to be Danny DeVito. That guy. I think for me, he just makes It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I know it's a TV show.
That is like the part. That's probably like the.
He's just a legend, Danny DeVito. What
that's
about you?
Probably the one good, like the only right answer there is having like a shrine of Danny DeVito. Oh man, I feel like if I were to choose an actor off the top of my head, I'd probably be tied between either Tom Hanks or Jim Carrey. I feel like they both have
Tom Hanks is those are great ones.
I feel like they both have ties like my childhood with films, like with Jim Carrey and The Truman Show and The Mask, and obviously Tom Hanks with Toy Story and Forrest Gump. Like those two would be my contenders.
Yeah, those are good choices. Like, you can't say something like Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio because you sound like a 14-year-old like teenage girl. That's like something that they would select. But yeah, Tom Hanks, great choice.
I was gonna say, after seeing this film, do you think you're gonna go back and watch the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like that 1920s silent film?
I thought about it. I genuinely thought about it. I looked it up. It's like from 1920. It's like a silent film, I think.
It's a horror silent film, yeah.
Horror silent film. I think I'd watch some clips on it on YouTube at worst. I'm sure the full movie's out there somewhere.
The full
Easy to
movie
find.
is on YouTube, and I have it right here in front of me. So if
How long is it?
It's an hour 15.
It's not too bad.
It's in German, but they translate it in English for you. But if you go on YouTube and you look up Cult Cinema Classics, their YouTube channel, they have the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on there. So I'm probably gonna watch it just for fun, but I feel like if anyone else wants to as well, it's there for your taking.
Do you think Nick Cage actually likes that film, or is it just
So it was mentioned that it was only in the movie Nick Cage's favorite film, but not the real life version Nick Cage.
I see. Okay, it would have been funny if it was his
It would have been funny.
actual film. I was gonna mention real quick before we wrap up. I didn't know this, so I looked at some research before the show. Nick Cage, his uncle is Francis Ford Coppola.
That's right, and that is why Nick Cage had to change his name because he got too confused with who that was.
I had no idea.
Which is, I mean, it's still fine, but like the reason he got his last name Cage is he loves Luke Cage from the Marvel comics, and that is the
Really?
reason, that's the reason why he changed his last name was to that.
Wow, that's cool. I had no idea. Luke Cage is the Netflix one who got canceled, right?
Yeah, well now at Disney Plus, but yes.
Okay.
So yeah, a little fun fact to all of our fans out there of Nick Cage if they want to know where he got his last name.
It's like Han Solo, like in the movie Solo, he's like, "What's your last name?" And the guy's like, Solo." And Han's like, "All right, I'll take it." Super random. I feel like I've read it somewhere too before. I just completely forgot about it. But wrapping up, Andrew, unless you had any final thoughts, I was gonna say, one more thing.
What's up?
I just read something online, and it was super interesting. At the end, at the movie theater, Nick Cage runs into Javi, right? He's like, "Oh, what do you think about the movie?" He's like, "Oh, it was too nervous for me. I couldn't watch it."
Oh yeah.
Someone had a theory saying that, do you think Javi was imaginary at the end?
Imaginary?
Like Nick Cage was kind of like Javi died in the shootout. Because, I don't know how he survived that. He dies in the shootout, and Nick Cage kind of imagines him at the end as like his friend appearing, maybe even replacing the younger Nick Cage. It'd be kind of like a funny / sad twist. I don't think that's what happened, but it's something interesting to like think about. It's like, why wasn't he in the theater? Just because he didn't want to watch it. He was too nervous. Seems
Wow,
like
that gave me chill just to think about. Man, maybe that's probably true.
kind of sad. Yeah. Because
Wow.
there was the shootout. I don't know how you'd survive that.
And we saw that he got shot at least once.
Yeah, he did.
Man, now you got me
interesting
thinking.
theory.
It's a good theory. I kind of like that too because we don't know where he goes. Like all they say is, we got a Vanity Fair interview coming, and then Nicolas Cage is like, "Oh, how about you go ahead?" And then that's the end.
It was super random, and I think no one else was around them in that scene. I don't remember if he interacted with anyone, but I'd have to rewatch it to catch that. So Andrew,
Yeah.
what is your score and closing thoughts on Nick Cage the movie? Or sorry, I'll actually read it. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yes. So I put a lot of thought into this because I was going back and forth between an official score. I feel that this movie hit originality when it came to comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I felt there was no point where it fell flat. I felt that the jokes were catered so perfectly to their respective actors. I feel like neither of them stepped into each other's boundaries. They were so well put together. This whole film was such a great homage to the incredible career that Nicolas Cage has had all the way up until now, that I feel, although it played it safe when it came to the plot, to the whole story, and again had similarities to The Interview by Seth Rogen and James Franco, it accomplished exactly what it meant to accomplish. So with all that, and I give it this score because of how original the comedy was, I give it 4 tickets out of 5. That's where I ended up.
Fair analysis.
Yeah, that's where I ended up.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where this movie has a goal and achieves it. Does it do anything special regarding, some aspects of the characters? Not necessarily, but it touches on them. But it's really funny. The comedy's well crafted. Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal carry this film on their back. It's a joy to watch, and it's a nice homage to Nick Cage's career. I'd love to rewatch it. I wish it was a little bit more. But again, like you said, it's still really, really funny. and I give it 3.5 tickets out of 5. So it's a good movie.
It's
I
a fair
definitely recommend
score.
seeing it.
Yeah, definitely fair score. But I recommend anyone and everyone to go watch this film. I feel like this is going to be one of those movies where you just have to say, oh, I've seen it. Like in 5 years from now, you could tell your friends, oh, I saw that film. I know what you're talking about. It's a good...
Cult classic potential for sure.
Definitely for sure. I agree. Yeah, it's going to be in everyone's little library on their Apple TV. So give it a try. Give it a watch and come back and let us know what you think about it. But for that, I think we have everything off our chest. What do you say?
I think that's it. I think we covered it. Had a lot of fun doing this one with you, Andrew.
I had a great time talking about this as well. But hey, let's give our listeners a quick preview of what are we going to be reviewing next week.
Yeah, so this is where we find out if you actually listen to the entire podcast. It's the key word. Yeah, so this week we're debating which one we want to do first. We went with the comedy one, but for next week we hope to be doing The Northman. Really excited for that one. Complete 180 compared to this movie. But I'm really pumped to see that and see what Robert Eggers has crafted up.
Oh, me too. I definitely feel the same way, that we're taking a quick shift from comedy to drama. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the great mind behind The Lighthouse has to do with this film. So we'll give that a try. We'll come back with you next Tuesday as we release our next episode of the Tickets for Two podcast. So thank you again, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew.
And I am Santi.